There's fun characters in it. I thought it was a well-made flick, and I had a pretty good time at it.
Wait, I'm sorry. There's no Bulk and Skull in this movie. 0 out of 10.
You know, it is deeply disturbing just how much innuendo and rumor gets tossed around during this time of year. I try to produce quality content for you people on a weekly basis, and these unfounded rumors about me just... well, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to be told that instead of spending my Patreon money on this new layout, this new set, this new outfit that is iconic, just pure and simply iconic, that will always be associated with Atop the Fourth Wall, to be told that the Patreon money that you, the good people, have been contributing to me is instead going to a Z-Bot fetish. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling, in fact. It has been nearly 1 year since the official end of the New 52 and beginning of the DC Rebirth initiative. Admittedly, the New 52 tagline had ceased appearing on DC titles a year earlier after the Convergence event, but of course the universe it created remained, and it was simply the way things are now, where even the animated films had to reflect the New 52 universe, starting with an adaptation of Flashpoint and leading into several other movies that were either adaptations of New 52 stories, or at least reflected the look, aesthetics, and general mood of the comics at the time. The message was simple: this is the new normal, so get used to it. Even if you actually liked the New 52 itself, it clearly did not resonate enough with readers in order to keep it. There would be no need for DC Rebirth if the New 52 was still successful after 5 years. Which it was not. Sales were down below where they had been before the New 52 had launched, with the top 10 charts dominated by Marvel, in particular when they got the Star Wars comics up and running again. Sure, Batman and Justice League titles were a pretty safe bet to be in the top 10, but that was it. Aside for a spike for Superman number 50 or an event comic, DC needed something like Rebirth. We were only a year into the initiative, and creatively it certainly has felt like a breath of fresh air, with an emphasis more on heroics and telling new stories with the characters. It truly does feel like a rebirth, despite the fact that technically this is still the New 52 universe, and we don't know where the revelations from the DC Universe Rebirth special are actually going. Well, aside from towards a creative decision that I don't think anybody wants, but we're all kind of curious what exactly they're gonna do with it, so kudos for building interest with it. And frankly, because they're so good, you should be buying them. Buy the Green Lantern books, Action Comics, Detective Comics, Blue Beetle, Wonder Woman, hell, especially buy the Titans book. It's been forever since I've actually enjoyed a Titans book featuring the adult members of the team who all act like friends, and I'll be damned if this book gets cancelled, so buy the book so I can stay afloat, damn it! But I digress. A year out from the end of the New 52, and I think that's enough time for us to try to give it an autopsy. Unlike a medical autopsy, though, there is no singular cause of death for the New 52 that caused it to limp along for years, slouching towards Bethlehem before mercifully dying without reaching the finishing line. There is no single thing or person you can blame its failure on, just many things that were all terrible about it. That being said, I do feel there is one major creative decision that could have saved it and accomplished its major goal of bringing in new readers to comics. But let's go over some of those other failings first, shall we? By all accounts, there was little to no preparation time for this, with creators only informed about the end of the old DC Universe no more than 3 to 4 months before it happened, barely giving time for them to resolve then-current storylines and get ready to be reshuffled onto new books. Editorial conflicts and reorganizations were frequent, with promises made about creative directions that were very quickly taken back, sometimes days later. For that matter, creators themselves began leaving or getting fired in larger numbers, mostly because of fights with their editors. There are incidents like George Perez feeling hamstrung by Grant Morrison's Action Comics run, needing to have his book match up with another taking place 5 years beforehand, except Grant wasn't actually telling him what was happening in the book, so he couldn't keep creative decisions going. What events were and were not in continuity anymore was in constant flux. In the aforementioned Superman book, George Perez couldn't get a straight answer about whether Clark Kent's parents were still alive in this continuity or not. Over in Teen Titans related books, the original printing and the floppies implied that there had been previous Teen Titans teams, only for trade paperbacks to retcon this, despite plenty of evidence to the contrary, even in Red Hood and the Outlaws, that implied the events of the new Teen Titans had happened, but then quickly mumbling some excuse about, well, they were together, but they weren't really the Titans. Voodoo, a lesser-known book launched from a Wildstorm character, had its entire first storyline retconned when the creative team changed over to try to fix what were considered problems with that storyline. Batgirl was no longer Oracle, but maybe she had been Oracle? She had been in a wheelchair, but somehow had been cured? What actually happened in the last 5 years in the DC universe? And hell, how could some storylines be in continuity and yet not in continuity when some of them were following up on other events or featured characters that no longer existed at all? And that's just from the actual stories going on in the books. I mentioned the editorial nightmares and arguments, but it doesn't end there. For reasons known only to supernatural creatures that haunt the night, Rob Liefeld was hired to work on no less than 3 books. Not necessarily drawing all of them, but still giving multiple assignments to a man known for his chronic lateness. This is the person you want to hand responsibility to for some of your books in a high-profile campaign meant to gain a new audience that is very fickle and may want to spend their money on other things. And then the man quit loudly and publicly, blasting several other creators and getting into Twitter feuds with people. At one point, Gail Simone was mysteriously fired off of Batgirl in an email, not even a friggin' phone call, with no explanation offered as to why she had been let go, despite good sales numbers and reviews, only to have her hired back almost 2 days later with even less explanation. Issues with women were also a pretty big topic. It's already frustrating enough that the Big Two feature so few women working in creative positions, but once the New 52 began, suddenly the only 2 working at DC were Gail Simone and artist Amy Reeder, who didn't even start doing work on Batwoman until its 6th issue, aka 6 months into the New 52. This led to a well-publicized confrontation between publisher Dan DiDio and a fan at 2011's San Diego Comic-Con, where the fan asked him about the lack of female creators, and DiDio dismissively said, "Well, tell me who I should be hiring right now." Asshole, that's your frickin' job, not the fans! Are you saying you don't know who's working in your industry? What the hell happened to the other creators who had been working for you beforehand? Then again, perhaps Dan just wanted less women around the office, considering the now well-known accounts of sexual harassment made by editor Eddie Berganza. The boys' club attitude of the New 52 was not helped by depictions of superheroines in the books, from Starfire, the sexual goldfish, who unhappily, because she never seemed to express happiness, offered sex with people she seemingly barely knew for no other reason than she was bored, and drawn in a way to emphasize TNA, to the point where a translucent bikini needed to be censored because even by the standards of her already bikini-like outfit, it was over the line. The previously mentioned Voodoo was an exotic dancer, and admittedly that was part of her original Wildstorm backstory, who spent most of her first issue in the middle of a striptease while someone else explained who she was. Catwoman's first issue ended with her having sex with Batman on the roof of a building out of nowhere. And whether you agree with the decision to make Barbara Gordon Batgirl again after 2 other characters held the title, and who had been retconned out of existence in the New 52, it still seemed like a pretty dickish move move to take one of the best examples of a disabled superhero in comics and just magicking away her disability with little or no explanation. And while I liked Gail Simone's Batgirl run, I do understand the criticism lobbed at the end of the first issue, where she seems to have lost a lot of the confidence and courage that made her so beloved. Oh, but let's go back to several other dumb things done in the name of terrible creative decisions. For some bizarre reason, it was decided that Jim Lee would create new costumes for every superhero in the comics at the time. And look, I love Jim Lee as an artist, but the man has never been a particularly talented creator, especially not when it comes to reinventing the wheel with costume design. Is it any wonder that every member of the Justice League ended up with the same collar? Even Wonder Woman, who despite not having a collar, had to have a necklace in the shape of the collar? Most of the redesigns were pretty bland anyway, or made with the mindset of a 14-year-old boy who wants to pretend they're more mature than they are. Adding unnecessary lines to outfits, Superman losing his red trunks and throwing off the entire design aesthetic of the costume, and like I said, the collars. Speaking of Superman, an unintentional side effect of the lack of color balance that helped emphasize a strong man torso ended up making him look slimmer and, well, not as powerful. As a result, in an effort to still make him look intimidating, anytime he needed to be threatening, just make his eyes glow red with heat vision. Huzzah! Now instead of physically intimidating, he's just another guy who can shoot lasers. And, you know, glowing red eyes is usually a sign of a villain. Brilliant! Despite the fact that this whole thing was supposed to be about bringing new readers in, DC apparently forgot that their books are pretty expensive for what is essentially 10 to 20 minutes of entertainment, so it might be good to let this whole new reboot settle for a bit before you start having big events. Oh, whoops! No, before the first year is out, gotta throw in those crossovers. Sure, the stories of those crossovers weren't necessarily bad, but you immediately go back to the old tricks that were getting people to sour on comics, needing to spend more money on big, game-changing crossovers that altered the status quo forever before you had even established a status quo. Several books ended up being canceled, and instead of analyzing why they failed, why they didn't resonate with readers, particularly ones that didn't have the name value of Batman or Superman, they just up and made a whole bunch of other books with characters nobody outside the comics reading public knew about. Or in the case of Threshold, a book trying to revive DC's various space characters, ones that people inside the comics reading public didn't know about. Bringing back old tricks from the 90s was a popular thing. Not just Rob Liefeld and the constant crossovers, but gimmicky variant covers, lenticular covers, special super-duper special edition covers, overpriced books that were no different, but they had a stupid cover that followed a theme and had nothing to do with the contents at all. Hell, even with DC Rebirth, we're still getting variant covers for some reason, although at least they cost the same as regular books. All of these things are terrible, and there are so many more things I could go into. So many baffling creative decisions and feelings of darkness and murder, and just a general sense of malaise from the line that put off even longtime fans of the books. But what, my friends, was the thing that I said earlier that I felt was the major factor in its failings? What was it that I felt could have saved the New 52, even despite all these problems? Well, it all goes back to something Dr. Cox from Scrubs once said. They did not commit. C-O-M-M-I-T. The entire idea of the New 52 was a reboot, a fresh start that could attract new readers without decades of continuity weighing things down. Whether or not that actually is a problem is a discussion for another time, but let's go with the premise. But the thing is, that is not what DC did. As I mentioned, with the constant continuity problems, DC did not reboot everything with a fresh start. The success of Scott Snyder's Batman work and Jeff Johns' Green Lantern work basically meant that DC was unwilling to throw out everything they had already done. So suddenly we have this vague, ambiguous idea that Batman has been in the field for around 10 years or so, with other superheroes emerging 5 years ago. And stuff like Grant Morrison's Action Comics or the first storyline of the Justice League tells about the mass appearance of superheroes some nebulous 5 years prior. But that's not a fresh start. Characters know each other. Characters still have their history intact, for God's sakes. Batman still has had almost half a dozen kids who called themselves Robin. There were continuations of storylines from before the New 52, like Batman Incorporated. Wonder Woman has a retconned history, but she's been around for several years now to undo a history that was never established for new readers. The Teen Titans may or may not have existed, and wait, why is Dick Grayson this Nightwing guy? I've never read comics before, and I thought Dick Grayson was Robin. Batman has a son? There are different colored Lantern Corps? Hawk and Dove? I've never heard of them. Wait, why do they have a ghost who's coming along with them? You see what I mean? Sure, it's a reboot, but DC was unwilling to commit to the reboot. There is no fresh start here. It's just even more confusing because now we don't know what past stories are or are not in continuity anymore. There was one way this could have worked, could have been successful, and that would have been committing to the idea of a fresh start. Just some general ideas on how you could do that. You don't start with a Justice League book with Batman and Green Lantern meeting. I get why they did it, tying together the then recent Green Lantern movie and the successful Nolan Batman movies, but screw that. You start with Batman and Superman in their first nights on the town. Forget Grant Morrison's Action comic stuff. Yes, it's an interesting idea exploring Superman's Golden Age roots in a more modern environment, but that's not what gets new readers. Retell the origin stories as if this was the first time they had ever been told. Make them succinct, and make your comics done in ones. Maybe have a hook for the next issue, but the comics should not start with multi-issue storylines. You have to convince people to spend $3 to $4 per month on this when that money could go for a tank of gas instead, and gas is more useful to non-comic fans. Make it a complete experience. Get them used to done-in-one stories, then start getting into longer stuff so they're already hooked. If this is the first time these characters are appearing, then I'm sorry, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I know some characters are popular with fans like Tim Drake, but no, this is a fresh start to the universe. If Batman's gonna start with a Robin at all, he starts with Dick Grayson. Later on, you can start reversing that and put him back in the Nightwing costume. People like character development, and if you've been doing it over time, it'll feel natural. But it's not a jumping on point for new customers if it feels like they still need to read dozens of books to find out why the hell something is different. Pop culture osmosis only goes so far, sadly. Start with a focus on the most iconic characters in your line, the ones that actually have some pop culture power. Maybe print some Wildstorm stuff on the side in their own universe, or at least separate it away from the main DC stuff, but new readers are going to be interested in the characters they've actually heard of. Then you can reintroduce older characters. This is what really prevented the New 52 from its goal of getting new readers. You don't start with Legion Lost when no one knows who the hell the Legion is and doesn't care that they're lost. This one right here is actually from Burger King. They promoted some Z-Bots at Burger King for a while, you know, just for the Kids Club meals. And that was the one time that Burger King Kids Club meals were superior to a Happy Meal. But in any event, hopefully DC Rebirth will continue to prove to be a huge success, and that we can sing its praises for many years to come. But for now, thank God for me, and thank God for April Fools.